who is a minister and director of the Hope Bus. And she'll be telling us a little bit about this. She's also a musician and an activist. Recent graduate of the Presbyterian Theological Seminary, worship director of One Church Louisville, and the founder director of the Hope Bus, which partners with churches and community organizations to turn needs of the community into strengths. So welcome to Stachelle, and we look forward to your words.
I want to say thank you so much for letting me be a part. I wish I would have known that you had Aletha and all these giants on here, and I probably would have willfully declined because I don't feel like I measure up. So thank you again for allowing me to be here. I know one thing that they said when we were on the call before everybody got on was that they really didn't want to focus necessarily on what was happening yesterday. But I feel like it's really important to highlight something. For 120 days, we have been getting punctured in these streets. And I say this, and I say the word punctured, and I mean it as brutal as you can think about it. Yesterday, I feared for my life. Yesterday, I feared for the life of Black and brown children. Yesterday, I feared for the life of my white allies and my friends and my co-conspirators. Yesterday, I feared for my life. But there's something that I figured out over the course of this 120 days of spending time with these people in my newfound community. Like it was about 3 weeks into the actual resistance, and we've been occupying Justice Square, and the police response is usually about 3 seconds. It's about 3 to 5 seconds that something happens within that small park. And I realized a lot of white people were like, oh my gosh, the police got here so fast. And I said, well, I grew up in the projects. We had police stations in the middle of the projects. And so that's the amount of time the police responded was pretty normal to me. And I say all that to say that something that I realized is that people who are coming alongside of me in this work, and it's a lot of white people out here, had no clue about the actual violence that Black people experience as it pertains to the police. But it's not just the physical violence. I think the very first thing that happens is a mental violence. I think we are violated mentally. And I'll say this because when I was of age and I could even drive, and I was a teenager, and I would understand something that my mom would explain to me very well. When you go here, when you do this, you are Black. There are certain ways you cannot act. I didn't particularly always understand. But one thing she used to say is, I trust how I raised you. I don't trust how other people were raised to treat you. I didn't understand until I was walking past cars where there were white people and I would hear doors locked. I didn't understand a lot until I encountered my very first encounter with the police. I couldn't understand when I was at Kentucky State University, which is a university in Frankfort, Kentucky. Within those 4 years of me being in college, of me being in undergrad, I was pulled over 22 times. Most of those times never resulted in a ticket. It was just sizing me up. But as I grew older and I came back and I moved to the western Louisville where I currently reside, I remember when I bought a new car and I was driving down to my house, which is on 42nd, and I decided to tint my windows. And the day that I decided to tint my windows, I was turning down and I've been a social worker, and I know she read my bio, but I was a social worker at the time working for CPS, and as I pulled on my street, they were working on the street. They were doing construction, so I had to go through the alley to go the back way to home. The minute that I pulled back onto the street, I got pulled over by the police, and something happened immediately. Every single time that I realized that I've been pulled over by the police, my posture is simply this: to put my hands on the wheel. I put my hands up where they are seen, and to be able to communicate to the police that I am literally getting my registration and my license, or whatever's in the glove department or compartment. And so I think it's so important for me when you talk about police violence, that when you are born as a Black child, the very first thing you learn is that they are not people who you want to mess with. We have always been taught that they will kill you. And so I think about the last 120 days, literally today, since May 28th of my life, and the fear that I have felt from rogue law enforcement, the fear that I have felt hearing my name being called because they recognize you as a leader, the fear that I felt, the fear that we feel since I was driving and I see blue and red lights, the fear that I feel that if something happens in my community, I don't even want to call the police, the fear that I feel as it pertains to the police, I understand something, that the violence that has been perpetuated is more than just physical, but it is emotional and mental. And so my work intersects, as I have worked as a social worker, an educator, and now as a worship pastor. I believe one of my jobs is to bridge the gap and to allow people, when we saw it really on display, for people to understand, like the police value people, the government values, the police value property, the government values property. Systemic racism all values property over people. And so I understand, and I'll end this with the fact that I understand that what has been done to me over the 120 days, but also 33 years of living, is mental violence, it's emotional violence, and it's physical violence. And so that's my experience.
Thank you so much, Stachelle. You've made it very real from the beginning, and I know we're waking up to what that is in our community. Karina Borillas will be our next speaker and can also, I'm sure, talk to some of the same issues with the communities that she works with. She's a native of Guatemala, director of La Casita Center, and which is a community of Latinx hospitality that enhances the well-being of Louisville's Latina community through education, empowerment, advocacy, and wellness, and also a member of St. William's Church. So we look forward to hearing Karina. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Minister Stachelle, I want to tell you that when you said that, I'm assuming you're including me in the giant comment. When I saw the ministry that you are doing, I told all my staff that lady over there is doing one of my biggest dreams, and thank you for all you do. It's amazing, and thank you for sharing your heart with us tonight.
Wonderful. I'd like to call on each of our community conversation leaders just to give us some final thoughts as we close out this evening. And so I'd like to call first on Stachelle, and then Sarah, and then Aletha, and then Karina, to just give us a closing message or a thought as we close our meeting tonight.
I'll repeat what I said. People who are in my session, just close your ears. We are in a paradigm shift. For Black people, this is our 9/11. We cannot afford to be on the wrong side of history. For all of our white folks who are here, you got to be our co-conspirators. You got to be our allies. You got to partner with us, and even when your guilt runs out, you got to stand with us. This movement is not political. This movement is not about anything else. This is humanity that is on the line. And when we vote and when we make every decision that we make, remember, it is about humanity. This is not about anything else but about the people who deserve to be looked at as human. That's what we have to do. Always keep that in our minds, that we are in a fight for humanity. And if you are not a part of the 5% who owns the 95%, this is your fight. This is your fight.